Okay, should we do that awkward thing where the reporter doesn't know whether or not they're live? All right, thanks everybody. Welcome to our next session that we've titled Clear Objectives, Clearer Outcomes. And with 2024 approaching in less than 2 months, we'll be spending our time this session exploring goal setting from the perspective of 3 incredible operators in different roles and companies. My name is Chris Hicken, and I'll be the moderator for the session. I'll be joined by Zell from Diggs, Ross from NHS, and Allison from Aya Healthcare. So what we'll do is we'll start with brief introductions and then get right into the discussion. And so I'll start off. Quick intro for me. I was COO of user testing for 8 years. I left to found a company called Enough Said, which ClickUp acquired in February of this year. At ClickUp, I work in the office of the CEO, and you might be wondering what the heck that means. Well, some people collect coins, some people collect stamps, and our CEO, Zeb, collects founders, and he stores them in the office of the CEO. So we obsess about how to deliver more value to our customers. Fun fact about me, I met my wife while I was living in a Buddhist temple in the middle of China. So that's my introduction. Let's move on to Zell.
Hey, everybody. My name is Zell Crampton. I'm the founder and CEO of Diggs. Diggs is a premium brand of innovative pet products. We're best known for our dog crates. I like to call us a Yeti for pet or a simple human for pet. So it just means high design, high quality products. And we're about 5 years old. Prior to Diggs, I worked for McKinsey, have an MBA from Columbia, an engineering degree from McGill. Fun fact about me is I've lived in 5 countries.
Awesome. Thanks, Zell. Great to have you here. Ross?
Hi, everyone. My name's Ross. I'm a consultant who works in the NHS in a large diagnostic laboratory. I worked in this lab for around 15 years and have been the lead for around 6 to 7. It is a challenging job in a public sector area. And my fun fact is that unlike real meetings, you can't see that I'm 6'7" tall.
And obviously a basketball player too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ross, you have a really interesting perspective. So you'll be able to share kind of thinking about goal setting from a different perspective today. So great to have you here. And Allison.
Hey, everyone. I'm Allison. I'm the project manager for the business intelligence team at Aya Healthcare. Aya Healthcare is a healthcare staffing firm. So our bread and butter is travel nursing, but we also do a variety of other things as well. Like I said, I'm a project manager for the business intelligence team. And for those who are unfamiliar with business intelligence, it's a fancy way of saying we handle your data and give you insights related to your data. So I've been in a data-driven field for about 7 years now. So data has always been kind of my heart and soul, and I'm happy to be here today to share my insights with everyone. Last thing is a fun fact about myself is I actually have no middle name, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Chris.
So you're Allison.
Curler. pause, curler.
All right, awesome. Most companies don't do a great job taking advantage of their business intelligence team when they're setting goals and thinking about decisions. So it'd be really great to get your perspective today. Thanks for joining. And before we kick off the discussion, I've one request for the audience, which is, and for the speakers, which is just to be brutally honest, be open with disagreements. That'll help us get the best ideas on the table for today's discussion. I will be monitoring the session chat. So if there are any questions there, I'll try to squeeze in a few if there's time. So with that, Zell, let's go ahead and kick off with the first question, which is 2024 approaching. How do you decide what to focus on, what matters when thinking about goals?
Whenever we get into goal setting for an incoming year, we always go back to the beginning. What is the long-term vision of the company? What are we trying to achieve? Sometimes that could be strategic in nature. What's our mission? What kind of innovation are we trying to drive? What kind of market disruption? It could be financial. What kind of growth, profitability, cash in, cash out are we trying to do? And what does that multi-year roadmap look like? Because then you can contextualize what you're doing the next year within the broader plan. And that's so we start with, so what are the kind of 2 to maybe 5, as many as 5, but really 2 to 3 kind of key goals for the year. And so going to 2024, that could be, hey, what's our financial growth? What's our revenue target? How much do we want to grow? How much do we want to reduce our burn if burn is an issue? Or if we're trying to get profitable, what do we want EBITDA to be, right? And then how does that translate into strategic goals? For example, we want to enter ABC channel. We're going B2B today. We want to go B2C tomorrow, right? We want to launch XYZ product. We want to hire some executive, right? It could also be KPIs. So we want to reduce our churn, to some number, or we want to increase our conversion rate. So I think understanding what those 2 to 3 kind of key goals are for 2024 are kind of contextualized within the broader roadmap of the business and where you're kind of headed at a high level. And from there, we take those goals and we say, well, what are the projects, the key sort of initiatives that we want to align on for the next year that kind of line up with those kind of key objectives and goals? And so the way I think about that usually is like, what are the levers I have at my disposal if I'm trying to drive growth, right? So let's say we're talking about growth, right? What channel do I want to look at something within channel, right? If I have if I'm selling today through distribution, let's say, for example, is there another distributor I could partner with next year, right? If I'm thinking about marketing and sales, if I sell widgets on Instagram, well, have I explored TikTok, right? Is that something, to kind of try this coming year, right? What about international, and so on and so forth, right? So there's typically those kind of key growth levers that you have at your disposal, and you kind of have to think about what are the pieces of the puzzle that are going to align with the big business goals for that year. Other things to think about, what resources do I have at my disposal, right? So some projects are going to be pretty hairy, and some projects are going to be kind of lower lift. And so understanding, what you have internally, what kind of resources, financial resources you have at your disposal, what external parties can help you. In our case, for example, we leverage a lot of our outside manufacturers to help with a lot of product development. So understanding what you can use to help propel your business forward is pretty important. And how long to realize value, right? Are we, sometimes businesses are very long-term focused. Hey, we're a biotech company. We're trying to create value in 10 years after FDA approvals. Sometimes you're like, actually, the market's really tough. Cash is tight. We got to create value this year. And that'll inform a lot of what you do on the growth side. And it could be on the cost side too, right? We're in a world where cost and profitability are a real thing. And that wasn't the case 2 years ago. So a question to ask yourself, what is my core competency? If I'm going to cut costs, generally speaking, you don't want to cut your core competency. You have to understand, where am I going to cut first, right? What can be outsourced versus not? And that's, again, tied to core competency, but it's also tied to kind of what is a natural outsource function. I always think about like what's low operating impact versus high operating impact, right? Getting your suppliers to charge you less, very low operating impact, lots of value, right? And then how can I test what to cut in terms of like marketing spend? But then there's the high impact stuff, right? Could be key employees, it could be key products, whatever the case may be. That's where you have to kind of really think through, like, what's the impact? Is it necessary? And will this align with the overall vision for the company? Once I have those sort of long list of initiatives that tie back to the goals, I always do a very simple 2x2 exercise, a 2x2 matrix, which is, I think one axis is value, low value, high value. Cost or time to implement, low, high, right? And then it becomes sort of, once you categorize your initiatives into those buckets, you definitely want to do the high impact, low cost ones. Those are the no-brainers, right? And you definitely don't want to do the ones that are low impact, high cost. And the debate really center around the other two buckets, right? In terms of, and that's where you discuss with your teams, you discuss with the board, you discuss with advisors, and that's where more the ambiguity lies. And then finally, a couple just sort of tactical ideas as you start to kind of think through all these pieces is ensure that everything you do is data driven, right? That's the most important, and that you get real alignment, especially if you're kind of an executive at the executive level, because these initiatives, these goals, these are the things that are going to have to be replicated throughout the company and up to the board. You want to make sure there's alignment and not major disagreement. And if there is major disagreement, how do you handle that? How do you work through that? Then finally, you want to get, once you got your long-term vision, you've got your kind of high-level goals for 2024, you've got your key initiatives that are going to drive towards those goals. Then it's kind of syndicating up and down, right? It's syndicating with the board. This is what we're going to do. This is our plan. This is how it ties into everything. Here's the numbers. These are the projects we're going to do. It's the investments we need, the cash we need, et cetera. And then it's syndicating with the teams below, the foot soldiers. What are they going to have to do next to kind of execute on the plan, right? And making sure everyone top to bottom is aligned on those things. And what I like to do visually when I go into sort of announcing the next year's plan with the full company is saying, here's our objective for our mission for the 5 years. Here's our 3 goals for 2024. Here's the projects we're going to do. And within each function, here's how your function ties into that project. So that way you have a total understanding, not only what we're doing as a company, but how your role literally rolls up into the 5-year vision and everything in between.
Amazing, Zal. And Sasha from the audience said data-driven decisions. We're going to hear more about that from Allison here in a moment. Couple of quick follow-up things that you said that prompted me to ask. I had a few kind of follow-up questions. The first one was, how often do you expect goals to change? And I guess the context for that is, I've heard some CEOs don't believe in goals at all, right? They have like, what are we doing the next 3 months and what are we doing in 5 years? But everything else in between can change. But other CEOs are very firm on the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan. What's your thinking about how often goals should change?
Well, generally speaking, I think the North Star, so that's the 5-year vision, generally doesn't change unless you're pivoting, right? So assuming that is stationary, the question then is, what can you achieve with the resources at hand in any given year in a reasonable way? And so going into any year, as I mentioned, if you've got that multi-year plan, you should know kind of, here's what I'm doing this year. Now, there's a couple things that might cause that to change, right? Everything from, hey, we thought XYZ product was going to hit, it didn't, right? Or what this happened to me personally, and I'm sure a lot of companies about a year and a half ago, the market went from being growth oriented to being profitability oriented. And what does that mean, right? Capital becomes tighter. So I think every plan is just as good as is always going to change. The question is how much. And I think you want to change major goals as infrequently as you can, unless the key assumptions that underpin those goals change. And I think that can fall into a number of buckets, from operational execution to macro factors to, a key decision maker, like you got to go like an M&A activity or something like that. So to summarize, generally shouldn't change too often unless something material changes in the assumptions that go into those plans.
Yeah, you mentioned, macro factors. Given all the changes in the economy, how are you balancing profitability versus growth? Where's your head at there? Is 2024 a year of efficiency, or is 2024 the year to push hard on growth?
Look, if you're in a sector or in a company that can achieve high growth and high profitability, go for it. I think for a lot of companies, myself included, capital has become extremely expensive, right? So the question is, how do I continue to fund the business, continue to grow the business in a way that's sustainable, in a way that's not going to be overly dilutive, overly problematic long term? And so for me personally, that means getting to a place where we can actually fund our growth and getting profitable, getting more to like the fundamentals of a business. And so I look at it as an opportunity to kind of right size the business, an opportunity to think about sustainability long term. And then when the market returns, when the capital multiples get better again, and the capital returns in a way that's exciting, that's when your company's actually well positioned to pour fuel in the fire. You have a really kind of lean team. You've understood what matters, what focus. You've got a lot of you've refined sort of the core competency of the business. Then I think that's when that's the time to kind of hit the gas. But look, if you can grow and be profitable, by all means. But I think now is the time for a lot of companies anyway, to be profitable.
Yeah, that's helpful perspective. Thanks for sharing. Ross, we're going to jump over to you because you work at a very different type of company, organization, and I think goals work differently for you. And I think it'd be worth the audience hearing how goal setting works, at the NHS.
Sure, thank you. So what I am effectively is a company embedded inside a giant public service. So I have all the same dynamics of a normal company. I have customers, I produce an output, I charge for that service, and effectively try and make all the balance sheet fit at the end. But the problem is that I don't control my budget. I don't get to control the profit and have full management of it. The company that I'm embedded inside is dictated by the politics of my government and the budget of my national finance. So everything about what I do is really out of my control. And actually the concept of goals, although I can have departmental or laboratory goals that I want to achieve, and I can have data that can tell me what the right answer is, I've still got a huge number of, I guess what we've heard already that Zell said as macro factors. I think probably we could argue that they're macro factors, but my macro factors are things that are substantial and very well established. So those are the challenges that I often see. So we spend a lot of time being in a place where we know, I guess the phrase I would use is we have all the idea, but none of the gear. So we have lots and lots of, we totally get what we need to do and what our kind of number one objective is. And we do have data, though I will also say that, again, in a public sector, getting hold of data can be very hard. Getting hold of clean, useful data can be very tricky. So you sometimes have to go a little bit on what do I have immediately available that at least allows me to make the first set of decisions while I try and get the next set of data, because you can end up in a place where you could be waiting 2 years for the perfect set of data to make the perfect set of decisions. It's never going to come. It's never going to happen. And by that time, things will have changed, different fires will have erupted, and you'll need to deal with them. So in a public sector setting, your most important thing is about keeping the lights on and actually keeping things moving, because it never stops. And so trying to understand what are effective goals comes down to more about where can you get the most impact and the most usefulness. That will ultimately, in my world, is about helping patients. If you were a different public sector organization, you might do it in a different way. So those are the big changes that you have to think about when you're trying to do things in my world.
So, Ross Kelly from the audience said, who has tips for getting initiatives down to the frontline management level in a geographically spread mid-sized company? And I think translating that for your org, how do you get people understanding the impact that their work has on the overall organization? How do you achieve that?
So that's actually a very interesting thing, because that's going on a lot at the moment. Since COVID and the pandemic, or certainly in the UK, there's been a lot of conversations around, oh my God, it takes so long. We always have these great ideas, like for clinical trials, but then we spend 3 years jumping through all the hoops and the decisions and how we're going to do it and what we should do. And there's been a big move to say that things are going to change, where we're going to just massively cut down how long it takes to get something started, is the first thing. But also the idea that says that we're going to actively look for existing effective practice and then endorse it. So there's another saying that I've learned from my mentors, which is it's better to say sorry than to say please. And that's really important in a public sector place, because if you constantly wait for full validation and permission to do something, you again will never get it. So getting that idea down to frontline management, in my world, trying to get the executive board of my hospital to understand why I need X from them when they don't really have it, is that I have to show them that I've already got something that is coveted by other peers equivalent to me somewhere else in the country or the world, that people believe that I'm doing something that's correct. So actually, sometimes the data that you're looking for is the data that you generate yourself from the thing you've already piloted or prototyped or that you've already started to create, rather than looking for data that says, I'm going to go to frontline management and ask them to fund or invest in something before I've even done it. That's kind of the way I have to do it.
Very nice. Yeah. Interesting. I think I'm going to use that as an opportunity to pivot to Allison, who, we're talking a lot about data and how to use data in decision-making, how to use data in goal setting. Walk us through how do you think about using data responsibly?
Yeah. So one way that I like to view data is you have to understand the variables that play into your goals, right? So you can have an idea of, hey, I want to drive revenue. Well, do you really know what plays into revenue? Because you can't set that goal or you can't achieve what you're looking for without really knowing the levers that play into it. So I think when you're coming up with a data strategy or trying to make a decision related to data, you have to know your factors that go into it. That's always ground zero. If you don't understand that, there's really no starting point with data. You have to really know the fundamentals and the math behind what you're looking to achieve. So from there, my strategy and what we tend to implement from the BI side is, now that you know your drivers, you know what plays into your points, define the problem that you're trying to solve for, define the decision that you're looking to make. collect the data points that you need, review it, analyze it based on those metrics, know what's a little high, what's a little low based on those variables, develop a plan, and then implement it. But that's not where you stop. I think that's often a misconception is you implement a plan and you let it run. That's really where the second set of data review comes in. While you're implementing your strategy or implementing your plan, you have to have data run in parallel. You have to review it consistently to make sure that your plan is checking out, that the assumption that you made while making the plan is actually factual to the data and the results that you want to see. So I think that's usually what I tend to advise people when they're looking at data is that data doesn't stop when you make the decision. That's when the second phase of data review begins.
And Allison, there probably are a bunch of companies that don't yet have a data team. How do you know when you need a data team?
Oh, great question. I think it really depends on the scale and the size of data that you're working with. I think anyone can manage and report on their own, as long as it's not too big of a data set where you all of a sudden need SQL or you need some of these advanced tools that require you to have a data expert. But back in my day when I actually was beginning, I was doing my data crunching within Excel, which I think is a very powerful tool as long as you know the ins and outs and how to crunch within Excel without, accidentally fat fingering something and then messing up everything behind it. But I think it really depends on the expertise that's needed. And when you're really at a certain point in your data sets where you need to have those experts behind it to be able to do data governance, quality assurance, data storage, et cetera. But I think I empower people of any background to use data because the tools are in front of you to be able to do that analysis. Something as simple as Excel, like I mentioned.
And what about, okay, let's imagine a world where we've set really great goals in January, and now we have to track and monitor progress towards those goals, or in your case, Ross, it might be a project that you're working on. How are each of you communicating or creating visibility around progress towards those goals or towards the projects? And Ross, you want to start us off on that one? I mean,
that's actually something that that's something that we've personally worked on a lot recently, because I do believe that's something that the modern situation of where we are with AI and better tools on the internet for us to be able to collect and hold data, so dashboarding and everything else. So for us at the moment, I'm a very algorithmic business as such. We're doing diagnostic pathways for patients. And we're all trying to capture information as it comes through as best we can. So that's our trick, is to try and collect the data as we go as best we can. And that's where if we want to talk about immediate goals that's given us more power in our process, that's where we've put some of our energy recently, is trying to set ourselves up to be able to collect the data as efficiently as we can and put it into dashboard methods, so that we're kind of sitting there waiting for someone to be interested. And then when they are interested, the worst thing you can do is then go, oh, give me 3 months to get all the data together so I can show you. You've got to try and have it ready. So that's where we've been trying to make ourselves as fit as possible.
Nice. Allison, your comment looks like it sparks a bunch of questions in the audience. Looks like Kelly wants to know how to level up her data analysis skills, like online courses. Like, how would one get better at data analysis?
Yeah, I would say make the online courses your best friend. Personally, I was self-taught in my analysis background. So I would say make the resources that you have online your best friend. You can take courses, you can YouTube different tricks and tips on how to review data. There's also, courses that you can pay for online. They have the UCSD Extension School, which I got my BI certificate there. There's more extensive programs, but I would say get your feet wet with the resources that are available online before spending your prized possessions and money on the extended courses, just to make sure that it's something that you're interested in. But yeah, I would say use what you have online.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing what you can get from YouTube for free when you have a quick question. Okay, Zell, back to the previous question. How do you create visibility around goals once you've set them in Jan?
Yeah, I think that it's sort of a multi-pronged approach, kind of when you're, when you're trying to figure that out. I mean, the data can be very helpful and very important, but also averages can sort of muddle, for example, what's happening at the extremes. You know what I mean? So what you often have to do is combine, data analytics, in a robust way with, certainly having a team around you that you can trust to kind of bring issues to you, right? And then, 3, I like to try to be my own customer as much as I can, right? Go through a customer journey. What is that like? Hey, I sell products, go to the store and talk to employees. What are they saying, right? Or if you're an online retailer, like go through the shopping process and go through like different things and see how it goes. And what I find is you often find great things that you didn't know about, but you also find opportunities that kind of like lead you down certain rabbit holes. And then one thing I like to do is I like to sort of create a culture of like surfacing issues as like core to what we do. In my role, I view it as largely like problem solving. Like there's issues that are constantly dealing with the business, and like getting through and figuring out what those problems are is like the biggest challenge. And so creating a culture where people are rewarded and praised for highlighting major issues, not telling on each other, but saying, hey, I went through this experience, this problem, I think is really important to unearth the issues that you can then go and solve.
Nice. Allison, do you want to add anything to that? Creating visibility around goals? I have a follow-up question for you too, Allison, if you don't have a comment on that.
No, I can comment on creating visibility around goals. I think, goals and data go hand in hand, right? Unfortunately, sometimes we don't hear about those goals until after the fact, and then that causes us to have to create backtrack reporting. But I think if we can get ahead of goal setting and data going hand in hand, creating dashboards, creating visibility to the business, I err on what I said earlier, where when you set a goal, you want to be able to evaluate that at the exact same time, because you can be able to course correct those goals and adjust along the way. So having the data easily accessible, if you can't track the goal, I would challenge you to not set that goal at that exact time. Have the data in place first. And then when you're prepared with data to actually evaluate it, the goal comes at that time, versus setting a goal that you're not really able to track and find success in because the data doesn't align and you just don't have a way of actually understanding if it's successful or not.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that, Allison, because company goals kind of by definition are cross-functional in nature, meaning multiple people need to work together to achieve the desired result. But this inevitably happens where, Bob needs something from Mary, but Mary's got 10 other things on her plate. So how do they work together to unblock work so that the team can work together and the team can achieve a goal together? Have you found a way to use data to detect when there are teams that are blocked, or things where goals where resources will heavily need contributions from different teams?
Yeah, we have. I actually think data highlights the fact where the process is broken or where a team needs to step up to participate a bit more. So I would say having that full scope reporting from every single division, but having a way to collide it together. I mean, when you think about it, when you're breaking down that goal and that metric, each business unit has a lever in that overall equation, right? So you can see when the scale is being off balanced. So I would say the data actually highlights where those inefficiencies are. And that goes back to making sure we're tracking the goal along with the reporting to identify where those inefficiencies are. So I also go back to your first statement with saying, how do you prioritize that? I say it always comes from the top down, right? If you identify early on coming from the executive level of what your company goals are, those should truly be the focus on anyone's plate. People should be prioritizing that, in my opinion, because that's where the company is heading towards, and that's the overall initiative that wants to be achieved. So I also think it comes with the data is one aspect of it, but the other side of it too is making sure everyone's clear on what the expectations are from the top down. And that was what Zell kind of commented on at the very beginning. Yeah.
So I love that. So it's a combination of clearly setting, and Zell, you said this too, clearly setting the priorities, the projects that will move the needle for the business at the beginning of the year, and making sure that those are priorities on everyone's plate. But also, Allison, I heard you say that you use reporting, and I assume that you mean some kind of weekly or monthly reporting cadence to report out when things are blocked. I assume that's what you were implying by that.
Yeah.
Nice. Ross, how about you? How do you detect when there are, cross-functional blockers?
I think they happen quite frequently for me. So yeah, I've got a lot of outside departments that are not in my control. So I'm not the CEO of my HR department, and I'm not the CEO of my procurement department, et cetera, et cetera. So they are great examples of when you have a really good goal that you want to do, that you've then got a group of people that I don't even have any line management control over, because they are for a wider purpose, for a bigger group. So in all honesty, there is an element of holding people to account, and without it being combative, and trying to negotiate and effectively taking the goal forward in multiple ways, trying to make sure that, you're not stagnating too much. You might have one bit blocked. You're going to crack on with one of the other parts in the meantime and try and move that forward. Unfortunately, like you said about Bob and Mary, Bob's going to be tricksy. So you're going to end up with all roads leading to Bob eventually. But that's when you have to kind of show that overwhelming evidence that says, actually, this is all stuck with Bob now. I mean, I'd like to say it's all solved by buying Bob some brownies, but I don't think that is how you should play it in a bigger situation. But generally that's the thing that we have to work with. And it can be very frustrating at times. I've learned over the time you have to be quite transparent with all the people around you and your team that also can't, and sometimes they can't see that it's something above you. But yeah, you just have to keep plugging away.
So my takeaway is a carefully placed bottle of whiskey on the right desk helps unblock things.
I mean, that's more for Mary, but yeah, definitely.
Nice. All right. Zell, we're a little bit short on time, but want to hear your perspective on this question too. Identifying blockers.
I think blockers between groups happen probably for a variety of reasons. Like, I think the primary one is, does everyone understand their goals within the context of the broader company goals, and do you focus on the right things? Sometimes it's an issue with middle management not giving clarity to kind of people to work on like the right projects. But sometimes, and actually it's happened to me recently, what seems like a misalignment of goals can actually be like process related issues and other kind of problems. So getting to the root of the issue is actually really important. So for example, we had an issue very recently where two groups of on our team were working on different projects, and we're butting heads as to kind of what the priority was. But when they kind of came together, we all kind of sat down, we realized actually both projects are priority. And the reason that you're butting heads is because it's a very clumsy process with unclear deadlines, unclear goals, and all that kind of stuff. So I guess my key message is, yeah, you have to have alignment and make sure that everyone's clear on what the objectives and goals are, but also make sure you're solving the right problem. Is the issue you're encountering due to a goals and objectives issue, or is it potentially something else?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. I feel like we could continue talking as a group for another 30 minutes at least, but we're at our time. For the audience, let's please join me in thanking Zell, Ross, and Allison for joining us, sharing their thoughts and perspectives, giving us some great ideas for goal setting in 2024. The key take. So I don't think we're going to have time for this, but Zell, Ross, and Allison ahead of time prepared kind of a key takeaway for everyone. If you had only one thing that you could take away from the session, this is what they would want you to take away. 1, ensure employees know how their work impacts company goals. 2, use data to set goals you can actually hit. And then 3, break down those goals into smaller achievable chunks.